In the battle over the eviction moratorium, landlords are often overlooked. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over how landlords have often been overlooked during this eviction moratorium. Most people don't know who the landlords out there who are suffering through this really are. And the article that I'm reading, they actually explain pretty good who landlords are. But before I get into that article, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you want to see on this channel. I'm going to work to keep bringing you articles about the eviction moratorium, as well as other news that's of interest to landlords. So, this article, it comes from fortune.com, and it says, "The overlooked figures in the eviction moratorium news, landlords." Yeah, I've been saying for quite a while, most landlords are small mom and pop operations, okay? You always hear about these super wealthy corporate landlords, and people, they get the wrong image in their head. So when an eviction moratorium like this is happening, it's the small mom and pop landlords who are suffering the most, okay? So let's get into this article, and I'll see what it says. Heavy recent media coverage of the latest eviction moratorium has largely ignored the group at the center of it all, landlords. We've met tenants in danger of being evicted and heard lots about President Biden's decision to authorize the moratorium. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's opinion last month required congressional action to extend the moratorium past July, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's decision not to press hard for a bill. But landlords, the moratorium's target, have been only a vague and distant presence. Yeah, it absolutely amazes me that they keep talking about, we need to get this money to these tenants. You know, these tenants, they're all, they're struggling right now. We have to get this money to them. And I'm like, wait a second here. The tenants don't need the money. The tenants give the money to the landlords, okay? The landlords are the ones who need the money, okay? Not the tenants. So when they created a lot of these assistance programs, all they thought about were, oh, we're going to get the money to the tenants as quickly as possible and everything will be good. It never occurred to them that, hey, maybe we should try to get this money to the landlords as quick as possible for the tenants, okay? But no, they just completely forgot about the landlords. They just assumed that, hey, they can just float losses indefinitely. They're all super rich. I mean, it was complete farce, everything that they said. They never even took into consideration small landlords especially, but even the big landlords are facing unbelievable economic losses through all this. A closer look at landlords may upend some stereotypes. The word landlord rarely sparks warm and fuzzy feelings. In popular culture, landlords are often evil, portrayed as heartless plutocrats or giant unfeeling corporations. Yet getting a realistic picture based on data turns out to be surprisingly difficult. There is very little research on landlords, Department of Housing and Urban Development researcher Todd Richardson wrote in a 2018 note. The lack of available research on landlords has created a policy blind spot. In an interesting data shortfall, researchers don't know the precise number of landlords in the United States. Assembling multidimensional data on them, he explained, requires combing through various reports found in the nooks and crannies of federal departments. So that's what we did. The search yielded 3 surprises. Let's see what these surprises are. I probably won't be surprised because I'm a landlord. I know lots of landlords. I've attended lots of real estate investing, association meetings and property owner association meetings and landlord type meetings. I've, conversed with many landlords over years now, and I have a pretty good idea of who landlords really are, okay? And the majority of landlords, yeah, there are big players out there. I'm not gonna joke, I've met big players, but there are also a lot of smaller players, a lot of them, and a lot of people who depend wholly upon rental properties for their living. Not only that, but there are people like me who are working a full-time job and are just middle-class people who also rent properties out. So there's a big range, but I think the majority of landlords are more like in my spectrum, okay? They are, they are regular people, regular middle class people. They own a few properties. I have a few more than the average person, but I'm a pretty ambitious, small landlord, and they just basically they can't survive a long period of time without the income from their rental properties and still be able to keep those properties. So let's see what the article says, though. The vast majority of landlords are individuals, not businesses. About 10.3 million individuals reported rental income to the IRS in 2018, the most recent year with available data. Some landlords with very little rental income may not have filed, but it's a safe bet that between 10 million and 11 million individuals are landlords. It's harder to estimate the number of business entities that own rental properties. But evidence from Census Bureau surveys, plus Richardson's estimate based on 2015 data, suggests that the number is less than 1 million. So among landlords, individuals outnumber businesses by at least 10 to 1. And it's really kind of misleading, too, when you look at all the business entities and assume that they are, these corporations, okay? There are lots of single-member LLCs. What that means is that an individual such as myself owns real estate under an LLC rather than under their personal name. So you could still be a landlord, it be owned under this business entity, but only be just a small individual landlord who still, is middle class, has a full-time job, and not some big corporate structure. It's just all how you apply for it. And LLCs are cheap and they're pretty easy to do. So I'm sure a lot of these are just, small individuals still, okay? Most individual landlords own very few units. The majority own just 1 or 2 rental units. The average is 1.9. Business entity landlords own well over 20 on average, with some owning hundreds or thousands. Yeah, that's the other truth. The majority own just 1 or 2. Now, me personally, I own 12 rental units right now. I had as many as 16 at one point, but I sold properties last year, so I'm down to just 12. But I am trying to eventually scale up and become a larger real estate investor. So, I'm actually not the typical case. Most landlords aren't even as big as I am. Individual landlords don't make much money on average. They reported receiving rent averaging $34,217 in 2018. The IRS reports deductible expenses, not including depreciation, averaged $23,679. No source provides comprehensive income and expense data beyond the averages, so we don't know the data's statistical distribution, but it seems likely that most of America's total landlords don't net much money. And I'd be willing to bet, especially for the people who own single-family houses, that they're only making, maybe $2,000 to $5,000 a year off of one single-family house at most. Okay, some of them are operating them at losses, even. Okay, they have family members or friends that they're renting to, or they just have super low rents, and they're not too worried about it. They're keeping the house for other reasons, maybe for appreciation gains over time, or maybe they plan on moving back into it in the future. They just, they're not that concerned about it, making the huge amounts of money. So yeah, you don't really make a ton of profit off of owning just 1 or 2 properties, but that's what a lot of landlords do. And that's why when they don't get any rent from those properties, they are just drowning in debt. Eviction moratoriums, which have been in effect for almost the entire pandemic, allow millions of tenants to stay in their units even if they don't pay the rent. The moratoriums weren't supposed to harm landlords. Congress authorized $46.5 billion to help tenants pay their rent, but administration of the program was left to local authorities, which have mostly botched the job. Through June, only $3 billion had been dispersed. Landlords were owed $27.5 billion of unpaid rent as of June. Yeah, and I hate even bringing this up again, but the rental assistance programs did not cover 100% of the rent that was owed to the landlord. So even if all of the money had been distributed that had been requested, a lot of landlords had tenants that didn't qualify for the rental assistance, but their state or local government still shut down all evictions, so they couldn't evict those people. So those people not only don't get rental assistance, but they also can't get rid of the tenants. So they're just stuck paying those bills. On top of that, there's a lot of reasons why landlords don't want to participate in those programs. So, yeah, the rental assistance program is a joke. It doesn't give just compensation, okay? And that's why these eviction moratoriums are unconstitutional, okay? And they need to just get rid of them. But interesting article about what the landlords are really like going all across the country. And I hope that more people begin to understand that, hey, we're not all super rich. We're not all these big corporations, and that we need help. We need to end this eviction moratorium as soon as possible.